that
So,
cool.
the second question I was
I
going to
hate how
ask
they did my
was,
guy Nipsey.
do you
Well, I
feel
hate that
that
too.
there's a level
It happens
of
though. You know, Nipsey was from a
having
gang.
to
You know, he kept,
see yourself as
following
great?
protocol. You know, and it made
And
itself too
do you
accessible
think that there's a
to the wrong
level
people.
of
Press
using people
and everybody
that
begin
you
to plot and
can
scheme around
do
them. That happens a lot.
respectfully, that's not detrimental? Like, do you think that there's a level of seeing yourself in a good light, in a light that you want to become better than what you are? And I'm going to, not in their mind, they don't see it as using people, but in a sense, somebody else looking in can say, well, they're using this person, but they do it respectfully. Not respectfully use people, but the way that they deal with people, in their mind, they don't see it as using, but somebody else can see it as using. Do you feel that there's a level of that that's okay to see yourself in a good light and to deal with people in a way that may better your situation?
I think that everybody should view themselves in a good light. I think that everybody should have self-esteem. So they should have enough confidence within themselves to believe that they are a good person. But that is also off of the basis that you are in fact a good person and not out here doing shitty and shady shit.
Mm-hmm.
But that all kind of comes down to perception. Because again, people do things that they may not feel is fucked up, and another person on the receiving end of that thinks it's fucked up.
Right.
But if we all had the capacity to view ourselves higher than what a lot of people do view themselves, because a lot of people don't have the best self-esteem because of their environment, where they come from, their family, this or that, how they look, whatever. So if we did all have the capacity to be on some, I think I'm a great person, I think that would be great for society. I do not believe that trying to use one another in order to get yourself somewhere or to prosper in some way is beneficial, because you have to think of the effect that it has on the person on the receiving end of that. So although it's fine and dandy for you and you are becoming prosperous out of the situation, it's not guaranteed that the person that you are taking this energy from is getting any good out of this. Now, if it's interchangeable and you both are receiving positivity from the situation, then that's a different scenario. Okay. But if only one person is benefiting from the situation and the other person is not benefiting, then yes, you are using them. And no, that is not okay. I think that it should be equal exchange. It should not be one-sided. So if people were able to level the playing field and everybody wanted to work on that type of frequency where we all work together and we all were trying to make sure that each other benefited, and it's not to go and say that, oh, we have to be so worried about one another, but helping out your fellow man is not that hard. Like, you making sure you're good, but also being conscious of another person is not that hard. You do that with your children. You're expected to do that with your children. So why can't we do that with our peers? But I don't know. For me personally, I don't feel as though the two have to necessarily correlate. I think that if it's an even exchange of energy, then it's good. But if it's one person is the only person benefiting out of this, then it's not. At the end of the day, it doesn't really work out, because all that's going to turn into is a fallout at some point. Because people, when they get used, they tend to feel used. So it's like, how can you not expect people to react or respond to that?
Right. And I mean, it leads to disputes, in the sense of, I was going to say, when you say, oh, people shouldn't use people, it's like, somebody once said, yo, if you can't be used, you're useless. I was always
It's one thing to help.
You know? It's
one thing to help people and receive help. It's a difference when you're saying that you're using somebody.
And then it's another thing, because these companies use us in the workforce, but then you cleared it up by saying, but we have a mutual benefit, in a sense. I'm getting a positive, which is getting my paycheck from the job, getting my benefits from the job, and I'm providing my time and efforts to the job. So it's interchangeable, like you said. But that's why I was trying to get at, like, narcissism isn't really seeing yourself as above others all the time. That's why I say a little bit of narcissism, not like a little level of it, just to see yourself.
I'm about to pull up the DSM-5 for you, because like you have to understand that there's more. Not only are there different variations of mental illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, like you said, everybody is not the same variation of whatever this illness is. So people present things.
And again, narcissism, I don't know when it became like a mental illness, but it really
narcissism has been a mental illness.
But it comes from the story of Narcissus, who, well, I guess that's why, because he did drown in the water by falling in love with his own reflection in the water. And in that story, because he was so enthralled with his own reflection, it shows that's where they get the narcissist from.
Mental illnesses, they are named either after a person who exhibited certain types of like symptoms,
degrading traits,
right, or
degrading characteristics.
It's based off of a story essentially. So when you look at the DSM-5, that was another thing. It's like, one thing about narcissism is it's reality to them, but fantasy to everybody else. If you understand what I'm trying to say. So within a narcissist's reality, they believe that they are the one most significant and important person on this earth, which is reality for them. That's how they feel about themselves. That's how they feel about the situations. But from the outside looking in, when other people are looking at a narcissist, that is a fantasy to them. Because that person has the capability of understanding that you are not the only person that is existing on this earthly plane. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you are not the sole significant person here. Mm-hmm. Or however they choose to define that is how they define that. Mm-hmm. But the purpose is that someone who suffers from narcissism, they are under a false reality that they are the one significant person on this earth. Hmm. And although that may be their reality, it is not a reality of everybody else. And it's deluded.
And you're saying
and that's what you gotta understand. It's a delusion.
That delusion occurs at even the iota of narcissism. If you're showing any if you're showing.
But showing that you
the
are
least on the spectrum that
you have
that narcissism.
That does not necessarily make you a narcissist, though. Just because you view yourself as better than other people does not automatically just
having narcissistic tendencies does not make you a narcissist. You can have narcissistic tendencies without being a narcissist.
Everybody has certain characteristics that they may find within different mental illnesses that you can read about. There's some things that I've suffered with that go to say that I have borderline personality disorder. But I personally don't feel as though I have borderline personality disorder. I personally don't feel like I have bipolar. But there have been certain symptoms that I have experienced that would lead people to believe that I did. But I don't. So it just goes to say, like, we all have the capacity to have to deal with certain symptoms because of environmental causes, because of personal causes, because of chemical causes, because of the things that you're exposed to on a daily basis, the fucking shit you clean with can
just
change
the chemicals in your body. You can have sociopathic tendencies but not be a sociopath.
I feel like that's a very slippery slope. In my opinion, I think that's a very slippery slope. I feel like if you still, because the one thing about sociopaths is the fact that sociopaths do not have the capability of having a emotional connection. They don't have emotions. They don't feel emotional things the way everybody else feels emotional things. So the way a TV show may affect me, they feel absolutely nothing when they watch it. So me seeing a scene and feeling, because that's the point of cinema. The point of it is to invoke a type of emotional reaction from you from the art of the acting. So if I'm watching something and I can start crying from it, but this person completely has absolutely no type of feeling, it's very different. And I really don't feel as though in most cases they have the capacity to null that desire.
So it's not black and white with that. When you're
And then you got to
dealing
think
with
about the fact that a lot of people who do have like that sociopathic personality, a lot of those people are in very high positions. A lot of those people are in certain type of industries. If you really think about it, like a lot of those people are like chefs, people who are like fucking CEOs, people who work in like Fortune 500 companies and shit like that.
because
they
lack
have
of emotion allows them to do
to act
certain
any type
things
of way. They don't
to
feel
get-
anything when they have to do something,
Mhm.
and it's more of like a sense of like, because I have no emotional connection, I don't care, essentially. So I can navigate through life any type of way because I don't have no emotional connection to
Attachment to
anybody
anything.
or anything. So it doesn't really matter to me.
Mhm.
So it's almost as if they get to be kind of like fluid throughout life because they have to mimic emotions because they don't have the capacity to feel that. So
You
they
do
go
know
off of
there are
everything
some
they've
that
learned.
practice to just be truthful, because with a diagnosis like that, you would go on ahead and say then pathological lying would be obviously introduced into that, because now if they're trying to get to a certain position but they have no attachment to anything, and you would think that they could be pathological liars.
They
It
could,
be,
but they don't. I don't think
they
that
don't necessarily have to,
necessarily
because you
be.
have sociopaths who let it be known, yo, I'm a sociopath and I have tendencies to manipulate people. I've seen videos on it. Like, I have the tendencies to manipulate people, and I try to keep myself away from certain people, like certain groups of people who are like susceptible to me doing this to them. So you have some who practice functionality, though they have these tendencies, though they have this diagnosis.
Kind of take those videos with a grain of salt.
But
I
even
feel like it's easy for people to
for
get up there
people
and
to
be
just
like,
say
yeah,
anything.
I'm a sociopath, but
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. For me, I really don't believe that people who have to deal with sociopathic tendencies really want to glamorize and promote it. However, you may have a sprinkle of people that I guess do want to do that, but I don't really feel like. And again, it's just my personal opinion. I don't feel like that is the type of disorder that you would want
Can
to
control.
Yeah, because it's like
That you would
don't
want to
have
control,
that,
or
that you can even control, because you have to think about the fact that because you have no emotional attachment to things, it's much harder for you to connect with people. It's much harder for you to garner up the capacity to care about things.
But
So
that just
because
ties
you
into
don't care about
understanding.
things-
So though your emotional understanding is nullified, you still have an understanding of how you're moving, and an understanding
but-
of, I don't have an emotional connection to this,
But
but
not only
I
is
understand that
is it
I live in a
emotional,
world where
you also
like-
do not agree morally. You don't have the same moral compass that other people have, because you don't have the ability to garner those emotional attachments that other people are able to
but
have.
it's like,
So
just
the way
because
you look at morality is completely different from everybody else in
Mhm.
society. You don't think certain things are bad.
just like
you don't think
but
certain
that
things are.
doesn't, that's what I'm saying. That's not the only thing impeding somebody from doing something. There are other factors.
I'm not saying
like,
that it is, but I'm just talking specifically to sociopathic
sociopaths,
tendencies.
and that's what I'm saying. You can nullify it and control it in a sense of, if you know something, though you don't have the emotional understanding, because your disease only, or your diagnosis only impedes your emotional gauge on it, but
So
you
believe
have
that you have the ability
psych-
to control your impulses.
you have of course, because if somebody who's a sociopath who has no emotional attachment and no moral compass feels like, all right, if this person pushes me, shoves me, I can kill him
You know
right
what else
now,
impulses?
and desire. So if the person has the desire to kill somebody, but knows that it's wrong, and if I do this right now, I'm going to go to jail. You get what I'm saying? They're gonna not do it. Like some will act on
But
that
then
impulse,
you have so many
and then
who will do it and probably get away with it because they know exactly what to do. So again, we don't even have the ability to gauge it anyway because we don't have the means to do the research for it. But you have to think of the fact that within this person's mind, they have the desire or the want or the need to do this action. So regardless of anything, that's an impulse. Some people are impulse driven and they don't feel satisfaction until they finally complete that impulse. So you have to also think about that. You have to think about how that can potentially affect somebody psychologically enough to dilute them even further, because a lot of these mental illnesses, people suffer from delusion. It's because the reality that we are living in, they're not fully in that reality. They have made up things in their head that are completely out of the norm of the reality that everybody else is living in. So because they have done these things, they're not playing by the same set of rules that we are.
Yeah. And you can't use the mask as you can't use the fact that they appear functioning to say that they're functioning.
Just because, it's funny that you say that, because when it really comes to the conversation of functionality, I think about it like this. You say that you're functioning, people say that they're functioning alcoholics, but you still have a problem. You are still drinking. You still don't have the capacity to stop yourself from drinking. You still can't help that desire, although you can get up and go to work in the morning. That means absolutely shit, because you cannot control yourself when it comes to this thing that you have an impulse for. This thing that you desire so much that you think that just because you get up in the morning at 9 a.m. and go to work until 6 o'clock, that at 6:35 when you're in the liquor store, it completely negates that. And it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Just because you can still go to work does not change the fact that you are suffering from a problem. It does not change the fact that this problem is affecting your life in so many other ways, whether you want to realize
and other
it
facets, but you're still, so I guess the whole
but how is that
label
functioning?
of functioning means that you're still keeping up with with what the norm is. You're still functioning like
to society's expectations. So then say that. And if that's what you strive to be at, then okay.
That's the only way you could put it, because then what else would you consider a functioning alcoholic? In your sense, it's an idiom to you.
It is, because at the end of the day, how are we saying that we're functioning with a problem?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make fucking sense. That we're still functioning with a problem. I have this debilitating issue, but however, I'm still functioning.
It is a messed up mindset.
It's detrimental.
It's a detrimental mindset. It is. It's like saying, all right, I have this leak in my roof, but at least the whole.
I got an umbrella.
Yeah.
So I ain't getting wet because I got an umbrella.
So in a sense, I still have my house.
But my whole house is getting flooded as I have my umbrella. Like, come on.
And you're still living with the problem. You're living with the hole. So
how is that really functional?
Right.
Like, I like to look at words for what they truly mean. Like, I like to look at them literally. What does functioning mean literally? Because functioning is not half-assed. Functioning is not partially doing something. Functioning
is getting a task done, though.
Working properly.
So now
that's what functioning is, like, working properly.
And it's now that's mad interesting that you even bubbled that thought up, because now if there's a goal at hand and there's a building around that structure, even if the building is coming down, if that goal gets accomplished, that's functionality. It's not efficient because the place is
deteriorating, you still believe that that's functioning.
If it's like, it depends on the goal, because of the goal. So now if the goal is completed, though there are martyrs, people who bricks fell on their head and all that, they function. They didn't function efficiently because and then you could think of sociopaths mentality to that. Not saying Jeff Bezos is a sociopath, but in a sense of you can just imagine that he hears these companies, these building structures of his are placed in locations that can be hit with natural disaster, and he's like, well, if they meet this quota, it'll be worth it. The payoff will be worth type shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, as long as the goal is accomplished, though I have complaints and there's problems, and that though there's a leak in the roof, as long as we're churning these packages out and we're getting our money, we're functioning. We're functioning. You know what I'm saying? I guess in a sense, but I get where you're going with it in the sense of, yo, is that really functionality though? You know what I'm saying?
I don't believe that it is.
Because it's like,
I think it just really goes to your comfortability within functionality. It's whatever level of comfortability you're at. If you're okay with having your entire structure flood as you are completing your goal, then that's going to be something
and that's
that works
why
for you.
something like a functioning alcoholic is really an idiom, because it's like alcoholism in itself is a deteriorating trait. It's a deteriorating disease
Because
or diagnosis.
you gotta think about the fact that all of the things that are in alcohol and the way that it affects your brain. Because that's really all it really does. It changes the chemicals. It affects the chemicals.
It's just like saying you're a functioning addict.
Basically, and it's just
that
like
right there
that
is
is
like,
just
it
an
sounds
oxymoron
crazy.
to me, because you're not functioning with a problem. Like that's really the way that I view it. It's almost impossible to function with a problem. You cannot successfully do that in the long run. Like it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable at all.